And I can edit it at any time. So that's why I'm going to be talking even while I'm recording. So you can say whatever you want and I can
Okay,
just
good.
cut it
What
out.
if we curse? No,
I'm pretty I'm unpredictable with what I say sometimes. So
Okay. Well, I'm going to do a brief intro. Well, I'm just going to introduce myself and let you guys introduce yourself, and then we'll just jump into it. So quite excited to do this mental fitness chat with two people who turns out they both know each other. I'm not surprised about that. You both raise my energy anytime I have coffee chats. So I'm not surprised that both of you kind of do know each other. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about mental fitness. How do you define it? Anything that surprised you? And when we look forward into the future. So I'm going to start with you, Erin, because Ina said that she wasn't prepared. So we're going to start with you just to give a just introduction.
Yep. So I am Erin Craiglin. I work as an account manager here at BetterUp. Shoot, we're gonna have to start again in terms of intros. Like, should I talk about myself or
just talk about yourself? Don't talk about BetterUp. Just yourself.
No, so I live out in San Francisco. I spent most of my life as a competitive athlete before I started working, and worked back in the day with Ina, who's incredible, and I have a 2.5-year-old son who takes up a lot of my mental capacity these days. But yeah, it's been great.
What was the sports that you did competitively?
I was a swimmer. So I swam at Cal and competed at a pretty elite level.
Okay.
Olympic level. Let's just put it out there. Like Olympic
trial. Let's not put it out there because that's actually not true.
Olympic trial. I said Olympic trial.
Oh.
Olympic trials level. Yes.
I'm going to start rumors about Erin having gone to the Olympics.
Right, swam with Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, she's an amazing swimmer. So I'm Ina Fabricant. I also live in the Bay Area. Although I'm an East Coaster, and came out here about 14 years ago, still feel like I'm an East Coaster at heart. I feel like my heart is really in New York, but I do love the Bay Area very much. I have 2 kids. I have a 7-year-old son, almost 7-year-old son, and an almost 2-year-old son. And that keeps me really busy. And I sadly don't have any sort of elite level athletics on my resume. In fact, the opposite. But I am trying to get back into tennis. So that's been like a new thing that my husband and I have been doing recently. It's been really fun.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, we all bonded because we all have kids around the same age. My boy's going to be 3 this month. I think Erin, your Otter is going to be 2.5. Yeah, but I feel like that's an elite level sport. Dealing with a toddler, the amount of things that can go wrong in the morning, having to negotiate. He's into wearing shorts at the moment, even though it's cold. We have this constant running argument, even though we've hidden the shorts. So yeah,
it feels like good parenting tricks.
Yeah.
I can say being a parent is a lot harder than being a competitive athlete in many ways.
Completely agree. So yeah, the first question I want to put is just, well, we just touched on being a parent and how challenging that is. But yeah, your mental fitness. How do you define mental fitness? Erin, I'm going to go with you first.
Start with me again. Gosh, without anything like eloquent to say, I think it's just, I think of it a lot of as like my mental state of mind. So how am I feeling about things? How do I, how am I reacting? Like a lot of it is tied in with emotions as well. How am I reacting to my, surroundings or different things? And just, it's funny. I was obviously spent a lot of my life focused on physical fitness and doing that. I think as I got to a certain level, your mental fitness plays a critical role in that. And that is probably, and I still find it harder or more challenging to do because it feels to me less quantifiable. It's harder to, you have to be much more fluid and flexible with how you kind of define it for yourself and how you train it. And it's something, it's not as though like I knew when I was in really good physical shape and when I wasn't. And mental fitness is kind of like, I'm doing okay. but like, I can't say that I've ever like, yeah, I'm just absolutely crushing it like on all facets, because I think your mental fitness impacts your job, how you show up as a parent, how you show up as a partner, like all different things. And I mean, I can't say that I've ever like knocked it out of the park on all of them at the same time. So it's much more like balancing all the different demands.
Yeah. I love that point that you just made about it being fluid and you never really feel like you're crushing it. Because like now about to become a dad for the second time, I think when I was a dad the first time I thought, okay, I've got everything balanced now. And then as your kid keeps growing, challenges keep changing. And then with the new things are constantly moving, I don't think you're ever really on top of it. And then something else you said, like with physical fitness, it's easier to quantify. And I always think like, how is it that we went through school? We studied all this in, but no one ever told us about our mental fitness, or actually, what do we need to focus on to know that we are doing okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is shocking to me how little focus there is. And I'll say too, just to add, I totally agree, Aaron, with everything you said. And I will say, like, my personal experience is I come from an immigrant family. So I was born in Russia. I was 8 when we immigrated to America. So my parents, I mean, the way that they modeled everything for me was basically rooted in sacrifice. So they were sacrificing, themselves, their health, physical health, mental health, everything so for my brother and I could come to America and have like every opportunity available to us. And so when you see that modeled for you as a child, I think what imprints on you is like, well, your own personal well-being isn't that important. Like everything that I'm doing is because I want my children to have a better future. And that's been very hard to like unlearn, because, when I became a parent, my default was always like, well, if I don't sleep enough, like, that's fine. Like, I'm just going to it's okay. Like, I'll have to suffer through it the next day. If I don't get to exercise for 3 months in a row, 4 months in a row, like, that's fine. Like, just like getting through the day and just making sure that my children were happy and healthy and putting them first, sacrificing myself for my job. Because again, as a child of an immigrant parent, like, well, you can't lose your job. There's so much risk associated with that. So you always want to put your whole self into the work that you're doing, because obviously it's so important to make to be able to, bring, just financial security into your family. So there's just so much that I've had to unlearn about that in fact, I think it's really it all came to fruition for me around COVID. Because, I just realized like I had a lot more time to think and process these things and reflect on them, and realized I was not in a good place mentally. And I was suffering a lot, and I had to make some really big changes so that I could really make that shift personally, really find personal thriving, and then show up as a better parent, as a better employee, and all these other things. So it's just been in the last couple of years that I really even started to think about like, what is mental fitness? What is mental health? And I think that's in large part due to Better Up in the work we're doing, and, putting that front and center. But I think it's probably like the immigrant experience, I'm guessing is true for a lot of people, having seen that modeled with their parents. I don't know if you guys have had something similar in your lives.
Yeah, definitely a lot. Yeah, thank you for that answer. And a lot to unpack there. Is not just the immigrant experience, but also what happened during the pandemic. I had the immigrant experience where my mum, she raised me and my 2 sisters on her own, coming from Nigeria to the UK. And it actually hit what you just said, having to unlearn, because my model of a good parent was my mum. Sacrifice, give everything for your kids, forget about taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I think I started to learn it before the pandemic, where I saw a lot of friends I worked with actually hit a wall and have a breakdown. And then I was like, damn, like when you actually lose your mental fitness, you don't realize how there's literally no safety net. And I kind of say, when you break a plate, you try and put the plate back together, it never really looks the same. Mm-hmm. That would be huge part to try and start to define what does good actually look like. And I love what you just said about the pandemic. Like, we had a lot of time, a lot of time to kind of review and well, you know, when you say how you feeling, you're like, oh, I'm good. But then you actually sit down and actually think, well, am I good in all different areas of my life? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's rare that like we feel good in all areas of our lives. But I think what I've learned is it requires attention, and you have to be very intentional about looking at all these different aspects of your life and recognizing like something is out of sorts. Like for me, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but like for me, my physical and my mental health are very interconnected. And so now I'm at a point where if I'm not doing something physical, if I'm not active during the day, I know that my mental health is going to suffer. So I have to be super intentional about that. And if something, happens, if an event happens, we're sick or, something, I'm out of commission for a week or two. I can tell like I'm like I'm short fuse. I'm like yelling at my kids more. I'm like frustrated more, not as focused. I'm not as patient. And so I have to be super intentional constantly about like checking in with myself and prioritizing these things in my life. And, making sure that everything there's time for everything somehow during the day. Now that is stressful in and of itself sometimes, because how do we fit it all in? Right. And I think as working parents, this is something we all struggle with.
I love what you said too, just about like, just as a parent, like, both of you, like you want to sacrifice so much for your kids and everything. But as everyone knows, like your kids also watch and see everything. Like you can see like the impact that your parents had. So it's just, and I do think it is like a recent phenomena, or people like to see, for your kids to see people talking about mental fitness or like prioritizing, the self-care or whatever you want to call it. Like, I think that's such an important thing for them also, because to your point about, we don't learn this stuff in school. Like we don't, where do you learn it? But starting early on to know like, hey, this is just as important. Like I need to figure this out as well. And, being in a healthy kind of mental place is as important as getting that top job or getting into whatever school you want to get into or anything. And it's so much weight that you carry with you, which is also a different kind of pressure as a parent too. You're like, I have to model everything perfectly for my kids because they're watching.
So true.
That's so true, actually. The thing that the kids are actually watching us, and we have to be more conscious of what we're doing, and definitely have to be a lot more intentional of how we do it. I was just thinking, what you just said, with all the demands and having to try and fit things in, it's like how do we maintain that being intentional? Erin, I was going to start with you on that one.
I mean, I think it's really tough. I think it's like an ongoing, it's an ongoing process. And I think like, fortunately or unfortunately, it's kind of like trial by error, like similar, like you kind of figure out like, oh gosh, if I'm doing all of this, doing all these things that I think are right, and then like reach a breaking point, then you're like, oh, I know that's not working. And just having to be, I don't know, really cognizant of what you're prioritizing, and just like knowing and trusting, and like, it's just different stuff of like, you want like my personality is wanting to, be in control of a lot of different things, and like not letting people down and doing everything. So it's like, oh, if Otto's having a meltdown in the morning, like, no, I'm not going to go out and go to the gym, because that's, then I worry about the impact it's having on Otto and also my husband, so, which is just dumb. Like, like then I realize I'm like, no, like I need to just go, like, everyone, this is a situation that will be fine. Now, obviously if something had happened, like, yes, you prioritize, but yeah, and I find it's like similar with work too. It's like, there are things that like can wait until tomorrow, or can, go out. And there's things that can, being able to kind of juggle and prioritize that. But I think you just have to, it's like, that in and of itself is like a mental battle of like, because it feels selfish. And I think all of us, want to deliver and want to be dependable and to everyone around us and all those things. And it's kind of, reframing that in your mind also of like, this is how I am dependable. This is allowing me to show up better for those people around me.
I love what you just said, actually, because mental fitness, it isn't that easy, juggling all these different things. And you actually have to know what your trigger points. I think you just mentioned this, is like, if you don't do physical exercise, you start to see yourself getting grumpy with your kids. Then you know that, okay, I've done that, I've given too much to work, or I'm not doing the physical exercise. And there's this feeling of guilt that we all, we grow up,
Yes.
saw our parents modeling. So whenever, like, if I say I'm going to go and do exercise and my son is just throwing a meltdown, I will feel guilty no matter what I do. But I know that I'm at that end of my short fuse. So it's like, okay, which one do I do? And it's a constant having to deal with that guilt and thinking, okay, no, I actually need this for my own energy tank if I'm going to show up as a dad, or show up, in all the different aspects. I never thought about it until you just said it, that it's actually hard work. It's hard work, constantly shifting and dealing with that guilt.
Totally. It's so true. I think for me too, the mental shift that's happened for me is away from maybe like superficial things. Like, for example, in my 20s, I used to work out because, I felt like, oh, well, I need to work out if I want to, like, be in shape. And that was important. Now, being at the 40 like threshold, not to age myself, but like for me, it's very much now about health, and health is a priority. And like circling back very quickly to my parents, they sacrificed, and now, basically they retired, and now in their 70s, they're trying to get healthy. So like they're both overweight. And so now they're trying to like, get in shape. It's much harder to do that when you're in your 70s than to establish really good, healthy habits when you're in your 30s, and then stick with those over a longer period of time. So that for me is like, I think I need to find that motivation deep down. And that's been very motivating. So I'm like, okay, if it's about being healthy and it's about living a long life and being there for my kids, like I can commit to that. It's not about the superficial. It truly is about something much more deeper and more meaningful. And so I think once that shift happened for me, I now prioritize that a lot more. And like, I'm scheduling the time on my calendar to do the type of exercise that I enjoy, to make healthy food that I know is going to make me feel good and will be good for my kids. Right. So that I'm just constantly trying to come back to that, like the why behind why am I doing these things? Why am I trying to fit it into the day? And connecting it back to something that's very meaningful, I find makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Totally. I think it is also just like you mentioned with health. It's just like keeping everything in perspective too. I mean, I think one of the things, like, as you get older, like you start to realize, so many more people that I know have had horrible illnesses or horrible things happen to them that you're just not as exposed to, until you get older. And it's like, oh, wow, that is what, like, you don't want something tragic to happen to be able to say like, oh, let me keep all of this in perspective. Like this thing that feels like this, whatever, whether it's a huge meeting or this huge ordeal, like is just, it's important, but it doesn't like nearly line up on in the grand scheme of things. And I think it's just, I find myself like having to remind myself of that a lot also, like when and less around like just the frantic things, but if I start to get anxious or like stressed about things or start to panic, it's like take a beat. Like there's so much, you're so like, I'm so lucky for so many aspects of my life. And just, it is about, prioritizing the things, family, health, the things that really truly matter. And that takes time too, because that's, that's just kind of how you shift your frame of mind.
I love what you just said in about what is the why, because I've always been into physical exercise, and it was a way of stress relief. Then when I became a dad, I realized that I don't have as much energy. And so I can't go and just, I don't know, run or cycle or do whatever I used to do. So I had to start changing. Okay, what's the priority now? Which is to stay healthy, to try to stay alive as long as possible, reduce my blood. So the whole approach to exercise kind of changed when I keep thinking about what am I doing and why am I doing it? And actually, and there was something you said after you just went on sabbatical. We were chatting, and you said that you came back and realized it depends on the type of physical activity. So you rediscovered tennis, and are you having fun when you're doing it?
Yeah.
And I never used to realize that until my wife's always like, are you having fun? Like, if you're going to do something, that's the first question she'll ask me. Like, what does fun got to do with this? So I've had to keep, yeah, I know. But she keeps asking me, and after 6 or 7 years, it's started to settle in that, okay, like, if you're going to do this, are you having fun, and is it going to fill your energy?
Yeah.
And I definitely wanted to ask you guys, yeah, something like, how are you bringing that to your mental fitness practice?
Well, that's like my whole mantra. I've been talking about this at work a lot recently. Is like, I have to be having fun. So whether it's work related or it's, what kind of exercise I'm doing,
Yeah.
I'm gonna I want to spend my time doing things that bring me joy. And like you said, like, fill my cup. That's not to say that every minute of a workout is going to make me like, sometimes I'm I was playing tennis with my husband yesterday. I was like not feeling a lot of joy. Like, it was painful. Running, just like got like me chasing the ball around the court. But at the same time, like, afterwards, when I looked back, I was like, okay, that was actually really fun. Like, I stretched myself. It was a challenge. Like, I enjoyed it overall. And like, I'm sweaty. Like, I know I got a good workout in. And same with what's going on at work, right? Like, not every minute of every day at work is going to be just the most fun, that you could have. But when I look back on the day, when I look back on the week, I'm like, did I learn something? Did I have good conversations with my partners and with my colleagues? And the answer is usually yes. And so that makes me feel really good. And it feels like I'm getting, it's bringing me energy. It's giving me energy versus like zapping my energy all the time. So I've been looking at everything kind of through that lens. And that's been really helpful.
Erin, really?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that's he brings up such a good point of like, it's always kind of that evaluation of, work. It's like, not that everything is going to be perfect all the time, but am I enjoying it more often than I'm like feeling really drained by it? Or, and similar, with, as I'm sure you guys both like, you don't have a lot of social free time on your hands as a parent. So it's like, oh my gosh, like, if I'm organizing to get a babysitter, to get auto settled, and like to stay out past 8:30 p.m., like, it's going to be something that like better be worth it and is really fun. And like, it's just like you say, you just have to be really like selfish in that regard of like, I just don't have the energy to devote to things that are, that I'm kind of like about. And I think that it's a forcing mechanism. There's literally not enough hours in the day, but it does, like, I've found like that's a much more helpful lens. I'm like, oh, I could have done this more in my 20s. Like, there's, a lot of different things that were kind of meh. But
yeah, that's actually a really important point that you're making. Like, saying no to things has become very much part of my repertoire. Like, if I'm not, there's certain obligations you just can't get out of. But for the most part, like, especially social things, like, I am being very intentional about who I'm spending time with. And if it's not people that I really enjoy being around, I'm probably not going to be doing that thing. Erin, to your point, like, there's just not enough time in the day, and I'd rather be doing something else. I think that has a big part, has a big impact on my mental health as well. It's like, hey, the people I'm surrounding myself with, like, are people that are making me feel good.
Kids, yeah, definitely. Kids I call them the masters of helping you prioritize what's important and what's not important.
Totally.
And even going for, we just really started going for date nights because now we have somebody who can watch us out, and it was amazing just having that 2 or 3 hours, something that you'd have taken for granted, but yeah, they do make you appreciate things and help you.
Yeah, I will also say, now that our younger one's a little older, my husband and I started doing this thing where we try, I mean, it's not always easy, but we have like a couple of days that we try to get away every like 4 months. So like about 3 times a year. And we're lucky we live in California. So we have like amazing places we can go just like for a day or two. But that's been really cool. Just like, reconnecting with him and having fun together. Like, we went up to, last month, we went up to Napa, and like we got to like ride bikes like around like a winery, like just the two of us without like kids, and having to help them.
Thinking of snacks.
I felt like such a kid again. Like it brought me so much joy and happiness and I was like out in the sunshine and the skies were blue and it just felt really great. And I felt like that filled my cup in such a way that I was coming back to work and home life feeling like renewed and re-energized in just the best way possible. So I would say that's not always possible, but if you got family around, they can watch the kids for a night or something like that. That does, getting away from like your day-to-day minutia makes a big difference too.
I 100% agree with you. And we got to do that last year where we got to leave my son with my wife's brother and his family. And we went to Jamaica and it was like rediscovering your wife again. Yeah. Like not being parents. And it was so much fun that we said, we're going to have to do this once a year. Doesn't matter what we have to do it.
I feel like you need to force yourself the first time to just do it. And then it's like, oh, then you do it and you're like, oh, actually, then you see all the benefits and like, this is great. And that's so good for your kids too. Like, I think that's so important to model.
Oh my God.
To say like your relationship is critical.
Well, that's so true. And also they like had no interest in us coming back. Like they have so much fun with my nanny. They're like, oh, like we walked in, we've done this now twice this year and we walked back into the house and they're like, oh, hi. Like they couldn't care less. Like we're back. Great.
Like, oh man.
I was actually amazed when we were away that my wife didn't even call to check on my son. I thought she'd be calling all the time, but we were having such a good time. She's like, he's fine. And he was fine when we got back.
Yeah, they're totally fine. It's more, as long as I think we have to just get comfortable. Yeah. But the kids are fine. They're having a great time. So
totally.
So last question I want to ask you guys is, as you think into the future, what's one thing you want to focus on around your mental fitness? I'll give you guys some time to think about that one.
I can go first. I mean, I think for me, it's about, I have to get better, like consistency. So all these things I just said are really great. Like they sound good, but I am not necessarily the best at being super consistent with them. I have the best intentions, but life, like we've been talking about, like life often gets in the way and things will get derailed. And I won't follow through. And so I think, my number one objective, I'm not even setting as a goal for like this year or next year or anything like that. It's just like from here on out, I mean, this is something I've been working on already, is just being really, really consistent with the things that I know do help with my mental fitness. I think I've done a lot of learning over the last couple of years to figure out like how do I dial it in? Like what is kind of what are the optimal things that I need to be doing to really feel my best? And now it's just about being really consistent with those things. So, no excuses, like just carving out the time and not like, oh, we talked about this. I think like last time we talked too, it was like, for me, it's not just like, oh, a 30-minute like workout at the end of the day or something. Like I'm trying to really been reading this research recently that shows like that actually doesn't do a whole lot for you. Really, the way to get the most out of like physical activities to like build it in throughout the day. So that, especially for us, right, we're just sitting at our desks in front of our computers all day long. If I didn't schedule it into my calendar, I would be here from 8:30 in the morning till like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, not having, gotten up except to get food essentially. Yeah. So, I have to, schedule like I'm trying to schedule like a 15-minute walk, in between meetings, like a couple of times a day. In addition to like at the end of the day, I try to squeeze in like, a 30-minute workout, or if my husband and I can sneak away for tennis, 45 minutes, there's a court near my house, like we're going to do that. but just being really intentional about these things and not letting them slip through the cracks and not coming up with excuses, because there's just endless excuses all the time. And so I can't let that get in the way. I just have to really focus on what I know is going to get me the best results in terms of where I want to be with my mental health and my mental fitness.
And I love that point you made about consistency. Like, almost we need a mental fitness blueprint of this is what good looks like for us. These are the triggers, because life's always like, work will get really busy or family life get really busy. And when those things happen, that's when literally the consistency goes out the window. And usually you're not actually sure exactly what good looks like. So it's always constantly changing.
Oh.
There's like anything that can help. Yeah. I think also the triggers is a big one. I'm just thinking about myself, where I want to know what those triggers are before I start shouting at my son, or I'm really, I want to know, okay, the trigger's coming, go and do this or do that about it before it gets too late.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, you remind me, I'm like, oh God, I need to factor more movement in during the day. Cause you're right. You can just like sit there and it's like, okay, luckily we have to walk to auto school. So I'm like, all right, at least I'll get that.
Right.
as the
See, I don't even do that because my husband drops my kids off at school in the mornings.
Yeah. But it's so important. It's like, I don't know, for me, the thing, it's kind of tied in with this, but like, it's nothing like complex that you have to do. Like, it's all, for me, like the thing I want to remember is like simplifying everything, especially like coming into the holidays. Like, my mother-in-law will be here. Like, there are so many different things like that come up, and it can like, as I start to think about it, like you let it like build up and ratchet up. And I think just breaking it down and like making things really simple, like in the same way, of just like prioritizing the things that matter. I just need to know, like, all right, I'm going to really care about these two things. And it's very like basic. Like, I know exercise, like I need to exercise. I need to like have a really hard workout. Like, I'm one of those weirdos who actually like really enjoys that. And
you like the pain.
The only
Actually, I remember talking with Amber, and Amber was like, I need to feel a little bit of pain. Just
for sure.
That's how you know the change is happening.
Yes. To be like a little bit miserable so that you're like, oh, I feel great. But it's like that, and it's getting sleep, and it's like eating good food, like in the like craziness like that comes up. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna remember those things and remember to like enjoy the time with my husband, the time with Otto, and like the little stuff of like, he's driving me crazy. I love reading books in bed with him, and I like, that's really cute. Or like, yeah, like when Otto's in bed, like just talking to my husband for half an hour, like those are the things. And it's just like, okay, those are the things that are going to take priority, and then everything else, you just have to like deal with it the best you can, but let some stuff slip.
I did want to just ask one question: is how do we deal with the guilt that we feel?
I think that's inevitable. And actually it ties to the one thing I wanted to add to Aaron, what you were saying too, is like having a safe space to talk through these things. Like, this conversation is awesome. Friends, like my close friends, not holding things in, like talking, like if I am feeling guilty about stuff, like telling them, or if something isn't feeling good or something doesn't feel right or something's out of sorts, like I'm sharing that and not holding that in. It might be my BetterUp coach, it might be a therapist, like, but just having that outlet, I think, is also really, or maybe it's your spouse, but like talking it out, because I find if I hold stuff in too long, the guilt grows. Like I find I'm resentful. I just like bad things happen. And then that plays out in all sorts of different ways in my life. So for me, that just talking it through with someone, who's close, like in my sort of inner circle where I feel comfortable and safe sharing, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, cause I think just acknowledging that the guilt is going to be there. Like, it's always, that's just natural. Like, I've never spoken to anyone who's like, oh yeah, here's the trick. Like, here's how you don't feel guilty. But like, I think it is just a matter of like, kind of, in the same way that you like get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's a huge thing you hear is math, like, but it's, knowing that that's going to be a feeling and like being attuned to it and managing it. But yeah, finding people who can help kind of talk you through and help. I think guilt is fine. I think as long as you're keeping it in like perspective that it's not like overwhelming or preventing you from doing, all the things that we just talked through that are so important and that you need.
Mm. And I love the point you mentioned. Yeah, bad things do happen for me if I don't talk about it. So I always try to have, if it's not my wife, my coach, friends, therapy, anyone, to just make sure that you're letting it out. I always also try to flip it and think, if I don't do this, think about the flip side. Yeah. And then that helps as well.
Two other things that actually help me tremendously. One is like I used to find myself really feeling super guilty or stressing out about like, oh, my kid is like eating something that's not like, there's no vegetable on this plate or something like that. And just focusing on like 80-20, like if 80% of the time, like we're doing the right things, we're putting the vegetables on his plate, or, we're doing the good things, like then the 20% of the time isn't so important. That isn't going to make the difference, right? It's the 80% of the time that's going to make the difference. So that's been really good too, for like the guilt and some of the anxiety I feel about some of these things. And then the other thing is just like putting things, Erin, you said this, putting things in perspective. And I find when I remind myself how lucky I am and how lucky our family is and how grateful I am for the life that we have and all the things that we have, that helps a lot too. Cause I'm like, oh God, like this doesn't matter. At the end of the day, okay, he didn't eat a vegetable today. Who cares? He's going to be fine. There's children in the world who don't have food, right? It's like, you have to remind yourself, like we are incredibly lucky with just what we do have, and giving back. And, that helps me too, to feel like ultimately I'm just doing the best that I can.
I love that point. Yeah, letting go and just thinking, am I doing my best? If I'm doing my best, you're not going to get it right every time. Just try next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's only so much that you can control. Like the rest of it, like regardless of how much you want to try to control everything, it's like the stuff that you're like, I couldn't even have thought or predicted that's what came in like through things. So it's just, it's like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So true.
Guys, thank you so much for your time. This has been definitely fill my cup up.
Thank you for setting this up. This is really fun. And it was something I really needed today. So thank you. Thanks, you guys.
Glad you enjoyed it. It was
better. The best people.
It was better just doing it off the cuff, wasn't it, Ina?
It was. I didn't feel that unprepared, actually.
Of course. See, I called it. It's just like, I got it.
You guys made me feel so comfortable. I was like, I can just say what I'm thinking.
I love that.
It's awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Good to see you. Have a good rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye, all.